On the day I was supposed to bond with the lion beastman, I ran away with the black wolf beastman I loved deeply. But I never expected that the black wolf was in love with my foster sister, and they conspired to take over my family's assets. Later, I was imprisoned by the black wolf and mistreated by my foster sister. It was the lion I had abandoned who came to rescue me, sacrificing his own heart. When I opened my eyes again, I found myself back on the day of the bonding ceremony. The black wolf, gentle and affectionate, held my hand, ready to take me away from this prison. I pulled my hand back and threw myself into the lion's arms, tears streaming down my face. Honey, I missed you so much. Chapter 1. Let's go, Yan, said James, the black wolf beastman urgently pulling my hand, eager to take me away. Looking at James, I realized I had been reborn. Reborn on the day of my bonding ceremony with Leo, the lion beastman. In my previous life, my bonding with Leo was arranged by my father. In this era of peaceful coexistence between beastmen and humans, beastmen possess stronger physiques and a keen sense of danger. As a lion beastman, Leo was among the best. Due to the Lin family's declining business in recent years, we desperately needed support. Leo, who had fought his way out of the lion pride, was the perfect choice as a powerful beastman. But humans can only bond with one beastman for life, and I loved the black wolf, James. He was gentle and affectionate, and wolves are known for their loyalty. I was extremely resistant to the arranged marriage imposed by my parents. I despised Leo, the powerful beastman who suddenly appeared. Unable to resist, I vented all my anger and resentment on Leo. I hated him for breaking up James and me, and for using his power to make people submit. So, before the bonding ceremony, I always treated him with disdain and resistance, mocking him whenever we met, never saying a kind word, often complaining about his dirty fur. On the day of the bonding ceremony, I didn't hesitate to run away hand in hand with James, not caring about what Leo had to face. Chapter 2. Recalling the events of my previous life, I pulled my hand back from James's grasp. I looked up and met Leo's eyes. A tear fell unexpectedly from the corner of my eye. My heart felt like it had been slashed, a dull pain spreading through my body. I couldn't help but throw myself into Leo's arms, hugging his waist tightly and crying out loud. James looked at his empty hand in disbelief, then stared at Leo and me embracing. The next second, he clutched his chest, his tail drooping, tears welling up as he said, "Yan, didn't you say you wanted to leave with me?" He glanced disdainfully at Leo and continued, "Didn't you say Leo was rude and barbaric, a scoundrel unworthy of you?" Looking at James, who was always gentle and affectionate, always putting me first. I remembered how in my previous life, after we escaped, he imprisoned me. His loyalty was never to me but to my foster sister, Lin Shuang. He was with me only for my family's wealth. They left me in a warehouse, letting the dirtiest rats gnaw at my heart. As my soul floated above, I saw Leo charging in alone, running towards me without hesitation. I shouted at Leo, "Leo, don't come please." But as a soul, he couldn't hear me. I watched as Leo transformed into his lion form, surrounded and bitten by the rats. He could have escaped, but James said that if he did, the rats would gnaw on me instead. I watched Leo being gnawed to the bone, turning into a pile of white bones. "Leo, I'm sorry, I chose the wrong person." Chapter 3. Anger surged through my mind as James continued to badmouth Leo. I rolled my eyes, thinking that if I hadn't been reborn, I might have believed him. Even if I didn't like Leo, I wouldn't be so low as to badmouth him behind his back. How blind was I to have fallen for James? Although I knew James was acting, Leo didn't. His brows furrowed, his eyes revealing a vulnerable hurt. I quickly tightened my arms around Leo, lifting my head to kiss his chin and then his throat. Clinging to his tall, sturdy body, I softly complained, "Honey, someone is slandering me. Help me teach him a lesson." Chapter 4. James was eventually escorted away by security, still shouting that I loved him the most. Leo pulled me out of his embrace, his hands clenched into fists, veins bulging, his gaze deep as he looked down at me. I looked up at him, my heart and eyes full of him. Our eyes met, and Leo looked away first, his voice dry as he said, "If you're worried that I'll retaliate against the Lin family after you leave, you don't have to. Whatever you want, I'll help you achieve it." Leo thought I was worried that if I left, he would take revenge on the Lin family, so I put on this act in front of him. It felt like a blow to the head. I opened my mouth to explain but felt like my throat was blocked, unable to make a sound. Because in my previous life, I did think that way. Thinking about the foolish things I did in my previous life, I felt incredibly blind. I stepped forward, pried open his hand, and intertwined my fingers with his, feeling the warmth of his palm. I smiled and said, "Leo, after the bonding ceremony, I want to go home with you." Chapter 5. Leo eventually bonded with me. He could never refuse any of my requests. After the ceremony, I eagerly pulled his hand and walked out. Then I opened the car door and sat in the passenger seat, smiling playfully at Leo in the driver's seat. Leo turned his head, seeing my smiling face, and froze for a moment. The next second, he leaned over to fasten my seatbelt. "Honey!" I suddenly called out sweetly, and Leo reflexively turned his head to look at me. His lips were cool as I kissed the corner of his mouth. In an instant, the air became thick, and the atmosphere grew ambiguous. A few seconds later, when Leo pulled back, his body was a bit stiff, his hands awkwardly placed. Seeing this, I deliberately glanced at his reddening ears and said, "That was my first kiss, you know." The car drove smoothly through the traffic, and I looked out the window, but my peripheral vision kept drifting towards Leo. A moment later, I heard Leo's slightly hoarse voice. "Mine too." He was responding to the first kiss. I smiled. "Leo, you're really adorable." Chapter 6. I thought returning home would be smooth. But we encountered reporters waiting at our doorstep. "Miss Lin, is it true that you dislike your beastmen? Miss Lin, did you not escape today because you were threatened and brought back? Mr. Zhou, what do you think about Miss Lin not liking you? Miss Lin." A swarm of microphones was thrust at me, forcing me to retreat. Leo steadily held me, pressing me into his embrace, his tall frame shielding me from everyone. His face was cold, but he didn't look at me. It was all James's doing, and I was furious. Leo must have misunderstood, but there was no time to explain as the reporters continued with their sharp questions. "Miss Lin, what do you think about the video online of you and the Black Wolf at the hotel?" My heart sank, and the next second, the hand holding me went slack. Security arrived to disperse the reporters. Leo looked at me with disappointment, sadness filling his eyes. He gave a self-deprecating laugh. "Lin Yan, there's no need for this. If you want to leave, I won't stop you." Chapter 7. Watching Leo's departing figure, I was so angry I could jump. I followed closely behind him into the house. Leo sat on the sofa, his face terrifyingly cold, his brows filled with a dense gloom and hostility. But he didn't give me a single glance. I stood in front of him, thinking about how in my previous life, after I ran away, Leo must have faced the same questions and ridicule. Tears fell from my eyes, landing at Leo's feet, and my voice became stammering. "Leo, I didn't do it. Please believe me. How could I do such a thing?" Leo couldn't remain indifferent. My tears fell straight into his heart. He sighed helplessly and pulled me to sit down. I continued crying, clutching his hand and sobbing. "I'm clean. I'm not dirty. Leo, I didn't sleep with him." I didn't know if I was sad about being misunderstood or about Leo in my previous life. My tears wouldn't stop, each sob more pitiful than the last. Leo went from helpless to flustered, wiping my tears clumsily. "Yan, don't cry. I believe you. I'll believe whatever you say." Hearing this, I felt even more heartbroken. It was like a raging fire burning my soul. I cried myself to sleep. Since discovering I had been reborn, I had been tense, only now feeling a sense of peace. Leo carefully carried me upstairs, holding me close to his chest, listening to his heartbeat, feeling safer than ever. Chapter 8. The next day, Leo accompanied me back to the Lin family. But from the second-floor balcony, we saw two people embracing below. I clicked my tongue. In broad daylight. In the garden below, Lin Shuang and James were kissing. Lin Shuang's clothes were half off, her hand slowly sliding down. James was in his half-beast form, his wolf tail and ears perked up, his hands caressing Lin Shuang's exposed skin. Their clothes were barely hanging on. I took out my phone to record, thinking about how many times James and Lin Shuang must have done this in my previous life, and how he acted so deeply in love with me afterward, making me feel nauseous. Luckily, my only intimate contact with James was holding hands, otherwise, it would have been too disgusting. Leo, seeing me recording, didn't say anything. Instead, he looked around to make sure no one else was there. As their actions became more explicit, Leo took my phone and pulled me into his arms. That's enough. Any more, and it'll hurt your eyes. After my tearful breakdown yesterday, Leo was more natural and relaxed with me. I was overjoyed, smiling up at him, my eyes openly staring at his lips. My thoughts were written all over my face. I wanted to kiss him. Leo's usually calm and stern face turned red, his eyes avoiding mine. What an adorable big lion. Chapter 9. In the study, I played the video I had just recorded on the table. The clear footage played, and my father was furious, slamming his hand on the table. But it wasn't over. Leo placed the investigation results from the reporters yesterday on the table. The explicit video, combined with the investigation results, spoke volumes. Even if my father wanted to defend Lin Shuang, he couldn't. Besides, the victim was his biological daughter. My father's face turned as black as the bottom of a pot. He looked at me with guilt and promised, "Yan, don't worry. This time, I won't be soft-hearted. No one can bully my daughter." In my previous life, after learning I was to bond with Leo, my already strained relationship with my father worsened. I moved out of the Lin family that day, saying I should never have been brought back, that dying outside would be better than being sold as a commodity. Later, when I was imprisoned, I learned from Lin Shuang that my father had died of a stroke. I didn't even see him one last time. The last time I saw my father alive, we parted on bad terms. Chapter 10. At the dining table, Lin Shuang looked normal, but her lips were red. I ate slowly, then coldly watched as my father played the video in front of Lin Shuang and threw the investigation results at her. Lin Shuang screamed in fear, denying everything. But the evidence was right there, along with the fact that she and James had conspired with the reporters yesterday. "Lin Yan, was it you?" Lin Shuang pointed the finger at me, her eyes filled with malice. "You had James seduce me because you're afraid I'll take the family assets. Why didn't you die outside back then?" Slap. My father, enraged, slapped Lin Shuang hard. His face was full of disappointment. Soon, disappointment turned to disgust. He shouted, "How dare you, Lin Shuang? What right do you have to insult my daughter? My daughter is Lin Yan. You were just something we picked up after Yan went missing." It was the first time my father had spoken so harshly to Lin Shuang. Lin Shuang couldn't believe her doting father would say such things, shaking her head in denial like a madwoman. Chapter 11. I was found and brought back as the true daughter of the Lin family at the age of 12, while Lin Shuang was the impostor. When I returned, my father tried desperately to make up for lost time but couldn't bear to let Lin Shuang go, only announcing that I was the Lin family's daughter and Lin Shuang was the adopted one. I didn't care, but Lin Shuang was always against me. She tried to take everything I liked. Before meeting James, she successfully took my friends. So when James appeared and wasn't taken away, I couldn't help but fall for him. But it was all a conspiracy from the start. Thinking about how my father's and Leo's deaths in my previous life were connected to Lin Shuang, the beast inside me roared. I grabbed her hair and slapped her face repeatedly. My palm hurt, and Leo pulled me away. Lin Shuang's face was swollen, glaring at the three of us with hatred, finally looking at me with deep resentment. "Lin Yan, don't be smug. I won't let you go." Leo was massaging my hand and I sneered. "Oh, I'm waiting." As if I was really scared. Lin Shuang was kicked out of the Lin family, and my father soon issued a statement that she had no connection to the Lin family. Chapter 12. The next day, I received a message from James asking to meet. I agreed because I knew James was planning something against me. But since I had been reborn, I could anticipate his malicious intentions. I planned to turn the tables, to catch James red-handed and crush him completely, preventing him from causing more trouble. Of course, I informed Leo, so my big lion wouldn't get jealous or misunderstand. At the cafe, James was dressed impeccably, deliberately showing his ears and tail. I loved the feeling of fluffy fur in my hands. Last night, I had forced Leo to show his ears and tail, and I fell asleep hugging his tail. Seeing James like this now, I only felt disgusted. He couldn't compare to my big lion at all. Yan, I miss you. When are we going to the hotel again? James wagged his tail, his ears twitching. These two were playing with fire, wanting to die. I glanced disdainfully at James's short, hairless tail and said contemptuously, "Trash like you can't compare to my big lion." James's face turned black, his tail almost bristling. But he quickly put on that disgusting face again, clutching his chest and pretending to be sad. "Yan, didn't you say you loved it when I wrapped my tail around you in bed? Didn't you say I had a great body?" Bang! The sound of glass shattering came through my Bluetooth earpiece. I hurriedly interrupted. "Huh, you're just a twig compared to my big lion." James's face turned colorful, but he endured it for Lin Shuang. I almost wanted to applaud his love. James leaned closer, his tone suggestive. "Yan, didn't you say that once you got all of Leo's assets, we would travel the world together?" "Damn, I did say that in my past life." Beep! The Bluetooth call ended. Leo must be furious. Just when we had gotten closer, it was messed up again. I was furious. I picked up my coffee and splashed it in James's face. "What a joke. You think you're worthy?" Then I left in a hurry to go home and make amends. I didn't notice the person around the corner holding a phone. Chapter 13. I rushed back home. Leo had just come out of the shower. I instinctively licked my lips. Leo looked incredibly enticing. He was in his half-beast form, his tail raised, ears exposed. His chest was bare, wet hair dripping water onto his taut muscles. My face flushed, and my eyes darted away. But Leo kept coming closer. His bronze, sexy skin, 8-pack abs, and graceful curves were mesmerizing. I wanted to touch him so badly. My mind was screaming. Leo stood before me, looking down at me, gently gripping my chin to make me look up at him. His chiseled face was right in front of me. Our eyes met, and the air grew thick. Leo suddenly leaned down, laughing softly in my ear, his tail brushing against my thigh. Warm and ticklish. Utterly seductive. "Yan, whose body is better, his or mine?" My eyes involuntarily flicked to his abs, my heart pounding. I blushed and looked straight at him. Under his lustful gaze, I slowly rose and wrapped my arms around his neck, my warm breath on his face. "Only you." Instantly, Leo's breathing became rapid, his eyes filled with desire. My restless fingers traced circles on his back. My fingertips tingled. Leo's body seemed electrified. The next moment, I was laid down on the bed. Through my shyness, I saw Leo's tail wagging happily behind him. His gaze was more direct and heated. A sudden kiss fell, his tongue teasing mine, leaving my mind blank as I obediently closed my eyes. His kiss was fierce and domineering, as if he wanted to meld me into his very being. My whole body was burning, my head dizzy, as he held me like a child. I clutched his tail, unable to stop rubbing it. Each rub made Leo's breath hotter. I felt like I was riding waves, up and down. Chapter 14. After a night of passion, when I woke up the next day, my body felt like it had been run over, my arms too heavy to lift. Beastman's desires are indeed intense. No matter how hard I cried last night, Leo kept going, over and over, without restraint. Leo came in with a bowl of porridge, seeing me rubbing my waist, his eyes darkened. But he quickly returned to normal. He wrapped me in a blanket and held me in his arms. I glared at him resentfully. Men's words are indeed untrustworthy. After finishing the porridge, I lay back down. Leo put the bowl away and climbed into bed with me. Our bodies pressed together, my face turned crimson, stammering as I tried to push him away. Leo didn't move, raising an eyebrow at me. I turned away in anger, ignoring him. The next second, I heard Leo's indulgent laughter and the sound of him getting out of bed. He brought my clothes over and helped me dress, then we cuddled again. To make amends, Leo revealed his tail. I squeezed and rubbed it, ignoring the desire swirling in his eyes. As I rubbed, a mischievous thought crossed my mind. Honey, I want to see your full beast form. I pouted, tears threatening to fall. If Leo said no, they would drop like pearls. But Leo never refused any of my requests. The next second, Leo appeared in his full beast form. The lion's mane was magnificent and imposing, his eyes looking at me as if he wanted to devour me. My eyes sparkled, my hands eagerly rubbing his mane, suddenly recalling my childhood. Honey, let me tell you, before I was brought back, I had a little lion friend. He was super cute. We promised to meet again someday, but I haven't seen him since. I wonder what he looks like now. Hey, honey, in your pride. Before I could finish, Leo's tail wrapped around me, pulling me into his embrace, cutting off my words. His tail coiled around my waist, and I looked up to see his dark, somewhat unfriendly eyes. Thinking he was jealous of me calling the little lion cute, I kissed his lion face and smiled. My big lion is the cutest in my heart. Leo's eyes darkened, and he returned to his human form. He pulled me into another wave of passion. Another room filled with springtime. Chapter 15. The day of my father's death in my previous life was approaching. I moved back to the Lin family to stay with him. From the surveillance of my subordinates, I learned that Lin Shuang and James planned to ruin me tonight. They were ruthless, hiring a rat beastman, my greatest fear, to film a compromising video of me. Coldness filled my eyes. I suspected that in my previous life, my father might have seen a video of me being imprisoned, and Lin Shuang's provocation led to his stroke and death. Thinking of this, my whole body exuded hostility. If they wanted to ruin me, I would make sure everyone saw their disgraceful video. Tonight was a social gathering in our circle. It was also the night Lin Shuang and James planned to act. I turned their plan against them. The lights in the hall suddenly dimmed. The central screen lit up, starting a live broadcast. As the door opened, Lin Shuang and James began kissing. A few minutes later, they separated, Lin Shuang panting. After tonight, the Lin family will be ours. James's wolf tail and ears were exposed, his eyes filled with greed and malice. Once the video of Lin Yan being defiled by the rat beastman is released, the old man will be furious. Then you can provoke him to death. The Lin family will be ours. Their greedy, malicious words were heard clearly by everyone present. Some even started live streaming. Leo and I watched from a corner, his arms around me. At 5'8", I felt like a child in his 6'4" embrace. I idly braided his beastly fur. The screen finally showed an even more explosive scene. A third figure, the rat beastman, appeared in Lin Shuang and James's room, eyeing them as they kissed. Suddenly, all three went wild. I watched with a smile as the drug took effect. The three rolled together. The actions were explicit, the scene too graphic to watch. Leo tightly covered my eyes, and I mumbled, "You can't watch either." Leo chuckled. All right. Chapter 16. Lin Shuang and James became infamous overnight. Their exploits were uploaded in high definition across various platforms. That night, the party host couldn't stand it and had the three separated. Lin Shuang and James never expected their cleverness to backfire, causing a scene and getting kicked out. To minimize the impact, they blamed the rat beastman. But it wasn't that simple. The rat beastman, in his fury, disfigured them both. After that, they seemed to vanish. But their videos continued to circulate. I couldn't let them off so easily. They had to pay 1,000-fold for what Leo and I endured in our past lives. But before I could find them, Lin Shuang came to me. After another night of passion, I lay in Leo's arms, listening to his heartbeat. Since my rebirth, I could only sleep peacefully each night listening to his heartbeat, free from nightmares. Lin Shuang's message came then. Back hill, don't be late. Along with several photos of James and me. They were from the calf, looking very intimate, almost like we were kissing. My heart tightened, and I looked up nervously at Leo. He gazed at me with affection, kissing me. I parted my lips, and his tongue entwined with mine, the kiss deep and passionate. 10 minutes later, I lay limp, gasping for breath. Leo gently patted my back, occasionally kissing me. Don't worry, I believe you. Chapter 17. I accepted Lin Shuang's invitation. The closer we got to the back hill, the more tense I became, my heart pounding as if it would leap out of my throat, my breathing heavy and rapid. Leo pressed against my back, silently giving me courage, our fingers tightly intertwined. There was an abandoned house on the back hill. In my previous life, I was imprisoned there, tortured to death. I watched Leo have his heart ripped out and die. Fear overwhelmed me, my chest heaving, my hands trembling, cold sweat pouring from my palms. Leo held me tightly, whispering, Yan, don't be afraid. Listening to Leo's heartbeat, I told myself it would soon be over, and we would both live well. Then Lin Shuang and James emerged from the house. They looked like different people. Their faces were destroyed, but their eyes remained as malicious as ever. Lin Yan, I will take back everything that belongs to me. Lin Shuang raved. I will kill you. The Lin family is mine. A terrifying thought crossed my mind. It was quickly confirmed. James, resentful and cold, said, Yan, didn't you run away with me? I was sure they had been reborn. But it didn't matter, neither would escape. Chapter 18. Suddenly, a corner of the house caught fire. The sound of rats scurrying echoed. James and Lin Shuang had doused the house in oil, intending for Leo and me to be devoured by rats. Then the fire would burn everything to ashes. In my previous life, they must have covered up everything with fire after we died. It was infuriating. My eyes were cold, my anger barely contained. Leo sensed my emotions, squeezing my fingers. I snapped back, filled with gratitude. Thankfully, I was reborn. Thankfully, Leo was still here. The fire grew closer, the sound of rats gnawing louder. Leo and I stood still. Knowing the danger, we had prepared. The next second, the rats changed direction. They headed straight for Lin Shuang and James. Countless rats swarmed over them, gnawing. Lin Shuang screamed, begging me for help. Lin Yan, I'm your sister, save me, save me. James's eyes were eaten, his face turned towards me. He was also begging for help. In my previous life, I had begged them to spare me. But they gave me death. They killed Leo. Before coming, Leo had found the rat beastman from the video. Today, all the rats obeyed him. Lin Shuang and James were gnawed to bones, bloody and gruesome. Leo and I left the house, setting it ablaze. The fire burned for a whole day. Leo transformed into his full beast form, and I lazily nestled in his soft fur. His body heat warmed me. Leo licked my face, his tail sweeping back and forth. It was both annoying and comforting. I finally felt reborn, together with Leo. Chapter 19. After dealing with James and Lin Shuang, Leo's true nature emerged. A lion who had tasted pleasure didn't know restraint. Every night, I cried myself hoarse, but he never stopped. I went to work every day with hickeys and a sore back. And my dad joined the baby-pushing brigade. 3 calls a day, driving me mad, but I only got angry for a moment. Leo, on the other hand, was delighted, promising to work hard. Every night, I felt like my bones were falling apart. After another exhausting session, I was worn out. Half asleep, I asked, Honey, why did you choose to bond with me? Leo's thoughts drifted back to our first meeting. Leo and Lin Yan first met before she was brought back to her family. At that time, Leo was injured and couldn't transform into his human form, roaming the forest. One day, he encountered 10-year-old Lin Yan picking wild fruits. Lin Yan, with her high ponytail, was playful and cute. She was initially scared of Leo. But only for a moment, then she pounced on him, rubbing her face against his fur. "Wow, little lion, you're so cute. Little lion, you're my first friend. I like you so much." Like. It was the first time Leo heard the word. Like. And he remembered it for a long time. From that day on, Lin Yan visited the mountain whenever she could. Even after Leo recovered and could transform, he stayed in his beast form. Until one day, Lin Yan happily told him, "Little lion, I found my biological parents. They've been looking for me." But she quickly became sad. "I'm leaving with them tomorrow. I won't be able to see you anymore." Lin Yan's hand kept stroking Leo's fur. "If you grow up one day, you must come find me." Chapter 20. The next day, Lin Yan left. Leo returned to his pride. He spent a long time growing stronger, always looking forward to seeing Lin Yan again. When he learned the Lin family was in trouble, his initial thought was to help unconditionally. Because Lin Yan and James were in love. But then he saw James kissing someone else in a bar. At that moment, Leo decided to bond with Lin Yan. He couldn't bear to see her with anyone else. So he approached her father, proposing the bond. Worried her father might refuse, he transferred all his assets to Lin Yan. Her father agreed. Leo married the love he had longed for. Learning that Leo was the little lion from her childhood, I was in tears. Sad that I didn't recognize him. Sad for Leo's unrequited love. I sobbed in his arms, promising, "Leo, let's be together forever." Watching the girl fall asleep in his arms, Leo kissed her forehead. His eyes filled with tenderness and affection. "Good night, my Yan. We'll be together forever." The end.